We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Siman Kuf Mem Bet, and we are up to Seif Bet in the Siman on Daf Chaf Daled Amud Bet of the regular prince of Mishna Berura. Maran writes, "V'yishuv sheyesh sham minyan ve'en mi sheyodea likrot b'Torah." What do you do if you have a small yishuv, or you find yourself in a Shabbaton? These things happen even nowadays. When you go to a Shabbaton and it's supposed to have a Pesach Hotel, it's supposed to have a Baal Koreh, it doesn't show up, and so on and so forth. So you are in this little yishuv, and you don't have a Baal Koreh. You have a Sefer Torah. You don't have Baal Koreh. What do you do exactly? So it says the Shulchan Aruch, if you don't have a Baal Koreh, likrot b'Torah ki ilchatah b'diktuk u'b'ta'amim, that could read the Torah properly with its tropes and all of the grammatical specifications, says the Shulchan Aruch, afilu achi yikro b'Torah b'bracha ki ilchata. Even with that, you should still read the Torah with bracha ki halacha, and you say the haftarah of the Navi, and so on and so forth. So how does exactly that happen? So says the Mishnah Berura, Yikru b'Torah b'bracha b'li nigun ta'amim. You could still do it without the ta'amim, if a person doesn't know the ta'amim, but you could read it. Someone standing next to him helping out with the words, and so on. You could still do that without even the tropes. Umashma mikama acharonim da'afilu im en sham mi sheyodea klal. Even if you have a scenario in which you don't have anybody that could read the Torah properly, and most definitely we gave subtle examples yesterday of things that could change the meaning completely with a basic mistake, like ba'a versus ba'a, rispa versus rispa, right? Simple things. Ones versus ones. All those things that we gave examples of Megillat Esther that's upcoming, and the regular read of the Torah, mitame, metame. And for sure this person is not a proficient Baal Koreh and is going to make mistakes like that. Afilu achi hitiru lahem likro bebracha. Even with all of that, there are those poskim who say you could still read it and say bracha on it, in order not to nullify the takanat chazal of having learning of Torah in a communal setting in those days that you're supposed to have. Rabbi Chizkiah de Silva, the great Gaon v'Gadol, is a generation after Maran Shulchan Aruch. He was actually the student. He was born in Italy. He was 20 years old when he moved to Eretz Yisrael. He became a student of Maran Galanti, Rabbi Moshe Galanti, who was a student of Maran Shulchan Aruch. And he unfortunately died young, but he was one of the greatest luminaries of Torah in his time and of all times, really, to the degree that some of the Achronim write that whenever there is no clear psak from Maran, which way Maran holds, Kibalnu Oraot Maran, we go after the Bri Hadash. Tremendous thing. So Bri Hadash over here disagrees. חולק בזה, וכתב, כיוון שיטעו בטעויות שמשתנה העניין, if they're going to make those types of mistakes that they change the meaning of the whole reading, כמו שבמקום חלב קורא חלב. חלב means prohibited fat, חלב means milk, or זכר לזכר, right? Zecher Amalek, the Gemara actually discusses this in Masechet Bava Batra, Daf Chaf Aleph, that Yoav ben Tzruya, the head of David HaMelech's army, made such a mistake, and he had catastrophic outcomes because his Rebbe taught him as a little kid Zachar instead of Zecher. So those are mistakes that we cannot afford having, says the Bri Chadash. Ve'en sham yodea shichal le'achzir hakoreh mita'udah, and there's nobody else to correct him properly. Pshita shen mevarachin b'Torah. Of course, you're not going to say bracha. You could read it still if you want to, but you cannot say bracha on the aliyot. Ve'en maftirim benavi, and also you're not going to say haftarah in such case, right? Now, if you have a katan that could read b'ta'amim, you have, Baruch Hashem, Achshur Dari. Now, the upcoming generation is more sophisticated than the adults sometimes, and you could have Lashiv Lev Avot al Banim v'Lev Banim al Avotam. Sometimes you have a katan, a minor, that could, professionally read the Chumash with that ta'amim and all of that, and there's no adult that could do it at all. In such case, Chacham Ovadia writes that the katan should read it. Katan should read, even though he's not bar mitzvah, let the katan read. Well, the katan, the Shulchan Aruch says, we will see that upcoming simanim, that katan ole leminyan shiv'ah. Technically speaking, a katan could get an aliyah and read his own aliyah in public, even if you have a Baal Korah. There's no problem with that, as we'll see. Klal Yisrael has developed and adopted some stringencies in this area, as we will, Bezrat Hashem, explore together. But imagine if you have an idea to get rid of all these problems. You have a plastic stenciled sheet that has all the ta'amim matching the otiyot. Right? That would be awesome, right? If you have for every parasha, you have a stencil, you put it on, and now you could see the otiyot through this clear plastic, and now there are all of a sudden nekudot and ta'amim everywhere. Right? You understand what we're saying here? You have the klaf of the Sefer Torah that doesn't have nekudot, doesn't have ta'amim, and you have this clear sheet of plastic that has what it's missing. It has all the dots and all the ta'amim. Now you don't have to get signs from anyone, you don't have to prepare anything, you can just sit there and read it. Is that mutar? That would be like this is $1 million question. Like that would be $1 million kula if you have such a thing. This don't think that it was not thought about. This was thought of, and it was asked actually to Rav Mordechai Eliyahu alav shalom, the Rishon LeZion, and he says you should not be doing that. Even if there's nobody else that knows how to do it, you still should not be using this. And again, of course, it goes without saying that if you have a Sefer Torah that they went and wrote inside the Sefer Torah the dots and the ta'amim, the Kaf HaChaim says that Sefer Torah is pasul. You don't want to have even there are those shitas in halacha that you shouldn't have writing even in the back of the klaf. And nowadays is also something to be careful when you get a new Sefer Torah, when you go to Achlasat Sefer Torah. Sometimes when the klaf of the Sefer Torah is an expensive klaf, you have nowadays a klaf that's considered avodat yad, which is 2-3 times the price of a regular klaf. And in order to identify that, the company that makes the klaf has a patch, a little sticker on every piece of klaf. And sometimes you have not removed it, and you have to go through it, you try to remove all of those, because the chatchila you don't even want to have something in the back of the klaf. Forget about in the front. So the Kaf HaChaim says if they wrote the nekudot and ta'amim inside the Sefer Torah, that invalidates the Sefer Torah. It becomes pasul if they did it with the dio, because this is not the way our Mesorah has been, and you changed it from the way it was given in Har Sinai. Therefore, it would be invalidated and it would be pasul. Right? Now, the Sefer Me'en Omer was one of the people who went around speaking to Chacham Ovadia about different questions. Again, the validity of this Sefer should be taken with a grain of salt. But again, one of the Sfarim that has maybe thousands of the Psakim from Chacham Ovadia, he also speaks about this stencil idea, whether or not it is kasher or not. And he says the same thing as Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, that Chacham Ovadia is said to have said that it is not something proper to do, to put the plastic stencil on top. But I believe many others would say b'shat hatachak you should be able to use that, because halachically speaking the Sefer Torah is kasher, and that would be still fine in a time that you don't have anybody else to read for the kahal, and you would end up with no reading of Torah or a very questionable read of the Torah. That would be sufficient enough to rely on to read it from the stencils in that way, placing that clear plastic sheet on the Chumash and the Torah, not Chumash, the Sefer Torah, and be able to be Yotz the Chovah in that way. Now, how about if you have no dio, no ink on the Sefer Torah, but someone very wisely went and engraved little lines on the otiyot, on the klaf, that indicates the sof pasuk and some of the ta'amim and so on. So you say, well, there's no dio over here, there's no writing necessarily with ink. Whether that would be kasher or not, this Chacham Obadia himself actually writes about that. Even that will be pasul, because that's also considered, that engraving also is considered a sort of writing, and this is not the way Torah was given in Har Sinai, and therefore it will be very questionable. But in this one, Mordechai Eliyahu was more lenient. He is believed to have said that in that case, b'di'evad, you could be yotze with this Sefer Torah. Now, the Mishnah Berura just said, we just read in the last piece that we read together in Mishnah Berura, that, and I read this again, the Pri Chadash disagrees, we mentioned, and he holds that if you don't have anybody else that's going to fix the basic ta'uyot, the basic mistakes of the Shaliach Tzibur, better not to read the Torah, right? That's what the Pri Chadash said. Don't say the bracha, certainly, because if you're going to be reading a read that has so many basic mistakes in it, you cannot be saying bracha on that, right? Now, the Kaf HaChaim explains this, that, and also we said that you don't say haftarah in Navi, right, with bracha. Even though that Navi you could be reading from an actual Chumash. So the Kaf HaChaim explains the reason for this is because the haftarah was instituted after the Gezerah. The haftarah was instituted. They should be read after the Kriyat Torah in a proper way. So when you don't have a proper Kriyat Torah, you would also say the haftarah without brachot, right? Now, it has its own history how haftarah came about, because there were times in Klal Yisrael that they did not let them read the Torah, and they would read the Navi, something that would indicate the same idea as the parasha of that week, but later on they just instituted it to be a tag along in addition to the parasha, even if you are reading the Chumash. So therefore, if you are having a proper read of the Torah, proper Kriyat Torah, you'll keep the haftarah as well. But if you don't have a proper read of the Torah, you also won't say bracha on the reading of the haftarah. You'll read it without the brachot of haftarah. Says the Mishnah Berura, one more piece over here. Pri Megadim also agrees with Pri Chadash over here that he should say the Kriyat Torah without brachot if you're going to have major mistakes. And again, we mentioned already that Kaf HaChaim agrees with this as well. And Rab Mordechai Eliyahu writes that if you don't have anyone that could read the Chumash, the Torah in public with proper nekudot and ta'amim, and you're going to have mistakes because no one could really fix him when he makes his mistakes, then he says you could put this stencil that we mentioned before. We could put it on to save the kahal from those types of mistakes that they can't catch, or from nullifying the read of the Torah in public altogether. So we're starting now the next Siman in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Kuf Mem Gimal, and we're going to read just the first part. Maran writes in Sif Aleph in Kuf Mem Gimal, Ein korin b'Torah bepachot ma'asara gedolim. You cannot read the Torah. This is the basic requirements of bringing out the Sefer Torah and reading it in public, and starts really from what the Gemara says in Masechet Megillah Daf Chaf Gimal, that you cannot bring out the Torah, read the Torah in public, when you don't have a minyan of Jewish male adults, Bnei Chorin, that they should be, not Avadim, Bnei Chorin, ve'im hitchilu ba'asara, but if you started already the Kriyat Torah, and there were 10 people, and then one of them left, now you have 9, but you already started Kriyat Torah, you finished the Kriyat Torah even with 9, because it's a general rule of thumb. We discussed this in earlier on in Siman Nunvav, if you remember, in the Halachot of Kaddish, that any dvarim shebikdusha, when you start a unit, you could finish that unit, not the next unit. But so Kaddish is a dvarim shebikdusha, Nakdishach is a. So if you started Chazarat Hashas, for instance, I had 10 people, and then one person left. Now that person did the wrong thing; he broke the minyan. Right? We say very strong language on him. Was Hashem Yichlu Chas v'Shalom. He's considered someone that turned his back and left HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, if he did not emergency have to leave, sometimes situations are different. But in any case, if you end up with 9 after you already started something that's considered the Dvarim Shebikdusha, you could finish that activity. Here in this case being Kriyat Torah, so you have to start it with 10. If afterwards you lose it, the minyan, then you could continue and finish the Kriyat Torah. And the reason that you can't do it less than 10 is because Kriyat Torah is considered one of the Dvarim Shebikdusha, that we learn from the Pasuk that any Dvarim Shebikdusha, you would need to have at least a 10 adult male Jewish people. V'niktashti betoch bnei Yisrael, the Pasuk says, and we learn from Gezerah Shavah, V'niktashti betoch, the word toch, bnei Yisrael, and on the other hand it says mitoch ha'edah hazot, that was the 10 meraglim, right? V'achalotam karaga. So you learn from that it is 10 when it says edah. Anytime that it says edah, so v'niktashti betoch bnei Yisrael, which is the mitzvah of kiddush Hashem, the varim shebikdusha, will be also the minimum of 10. And therefore, you would not say, you would not bring out the Torah to read it publicly if you don't have 10 people. Now, if you read with bracha, with less than 10 people, then all the brachot are labatala. You can't do that, right? How about reading Parashat Zachor? It's upcoming week, right? How about reading Parashat Zachor for women? Right, so Maran holds that reading Parashat Zachor, for men at least, is a mitzvah d'oraita. For women, it's not so simple because, again, it gets into a machloket, sefer chinuch, others, whether women are part of the mitzvah of eradication of Amalek. They're not benot milchama. They're not really, people who normally would wage war, and so on. So in that case, even though that the kriya is without bracha, is best to have it in front of asara anashim. Best to have it with the presence of 10 men. And the reason for that is, again, you're bringing out the Sefer Torah in next Siman, Kufam Gimel, actually right over here, and the next one, Kufam Dalet, will be discussing the limitations of bringing out Sefer Torah and so on. So that's one piece, one last piece over here as well, that the Mishnah Berura writes, Gedolim la'afuke ktanim shem pchudim m-13 v'yom echad, af al gav de katan mashlim leminyan shiva, even though that in halachot in certain halachot, even regarding Kriyat Torah, a katan, a minor, could be one of the aliyot of Sefer Torah, but you need 10 adults without him to start the aliyot. Now, once you have a minyan, a katan could get an aliyah and even read part of the Torah, according to Shulchan Aruch, but nevertheless, he cannot be part of the 10 for allowing to read the Torah betzibur with bracha. And it says Maran Shulchan Aruch, if you started with 10 and then one left, when it's considered starting? You brought the Sefer Torah out from Aaron, you put it out there, the Kohen goes up, says, Baruchu et Hashem HaMevorach, and then the guy says, okay, Baruch Hashem, they started, I'm gonna, I'm gonna jump ship, I have to leave. Can he do that or not? Lo haveh hatchala bazeh. Baruchu is not considered hatchala. It has to be that they actually started the Kriyat Torah, and anything less than that would not be considered sufficient. If they know from the very beginning, when they're bringing out the Sefer Torah, they know that since once you start, a bunch of people are going to leave, and you're not going to have a minyan, then the Ben Ish Chai writes it's asur to start. This is only a b'di'evet situation. It was an unexpected situation. But if you know that by the time you bring the Sefer Torah and you start, you're not going to have a minyan, says the Ben Ish Chai and Rav Pe'alim, don't start it. Don't bring out the Torah. Don't start reading it, because this halacha is said only in a situation that you find yourself b'di'evet, not knowing. But if you do know that you're not going to have a minyan, you should not start. Now, we said that if you started just Baruchu, is not considered really hatchala. That is mashma from the Shulchan Aruch over here, and the Mishnah Berura, that if you started the bracha of Asher Bachar Banu, that already is considered hatchala without even the Baal Koreh reading the Torah. And again, that's the psak the Kaf HaChaim gives as well, that as soon as he starts reading the bracha, saying the bracha, that would be considered Baruch Atah Hashem. It's already considered the start of the Kriyat Torah, and that allows the person to not allows, but again, if the person left and you end up with 9, then you could still continue reading the Torah, and that's up to 5 people leaving. If already 5 people left, you cannot even continue that. You have to have a rov minyan staying, 6 people minimum. If you end up with 5 people only, then you have to stop it wherever you are. So therefore, even though that we say that the Kaddish, Kedusha, Nagdashah, Chazarat HaShas, Kriyat Torah, that you started with 10 and then some left doesn't mean the 9 people left and you're left alone, or even 5 people left and you have half a minyan. You have to have a majority of minyan staying, and then even with all of that, the Mishnah Berura brings here that with the pasuk that we mentioned, that those people who leave, they're doing an isur anyways, and on them it says the pasuk in Yeshaya, Chas v'shalom v'ozvei Hashem yichlu. And again, even ben gavra legavra, even between 2 aliyot, is asur to leave if you're going to be breaking the minyan. But if there are already 10 people in the shul, then you could leave ben gavra legavra. It's important to note that even if you have 100 people in the shul, you can't leave in the middle of reading of the Torah. That's the direct disrespect to the Chumash, to the Torah. So you have to wait until between the 2 aliyot, but that would not apply if you have only 10 people and you will be one of them breaking the minyan by leaving. That, of course, should not be done. Bezrat Hashem will continue Seif Bet in the days to come. Chazak u'Baruch.